Today on The Report, we discuss the impact of Russia's missiles in Ukraine and President Biden's response to these airstrikes.
Plus, the Parkland school shooters trial coming to a conclusion.
Biden's executive order to pardon marijuana possession and LA City Council President Nury Martinez's resignation. The Report starts now.
Hello, I'm Elmira Darmanian.
I'm Amanda Nemec.
And I'm Enrique Medina. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Report, CSUF, or on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV, CSUF, to keep in touch with us and view our new content.
Russia has launched its biggest airstrike since the start of the war with Ukraine. On October 9th, a Russian missile hit the town of Zaporozhye, where officials are saying they have more than 30 civilians dead and countless other wounded. More missiles rained down on October 10th, hitting the capital Kyiv and several other cities across Ukraine. The cruise missiles were fired from air, land, and sea, making the most significant airstrike since the war began in February. Ukraine officials said at least 11 people have been killed so far and scores of people injured. 11 major infrastructure targets were also hit in 8 regions, leaving parts of the country with no electricity, water, or heat. This strike comes as retaliation after Russia accused Ukrainian forces of striking the Kerch Strait Bridge, which is a key military target and links the country with the contested land of Crimea. Ukraine openly celebrated the strike but did not claim any responsibility for it. President Vladimir Putin called it, quote, an act of terrorism, end of quote, and said he had ordered massive long-range strikes after the attack, saying, quote, to leave such acts without responses is simply impossible, end of quote. These recent airstrikes from Russia have been targeting Ukraine civilians and non-military infrastructure, prompting UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric to comment, quote, this constitutes another unacceptable escalation of the war, and as always, civilians are paying the highest price. So you guys remember how just last week we were talking about some victories that Ukraine had, but now, do you think that Russia changed their tactics, and what do you think will come next?
Well, I think this whole situation is more Russia's response to the attack on the Kerch Strait Bridge. And just to give some context about the bridge itself, it was Vladimir Putin and Russia had seized it from Ukraine back in the year 2014. And also it's been playing a pretty pivotal role in the war because it's been the primary supply route for Moscow's forces fighting in the southern regions of Ukraine. So I think this is more directly a actual response to the attack. I do think, however, the missiles that were actually striked in Ukraine can potentially be something Russia looks back on and could be a blueprint if they may need to go to that in the future of the war. But I do really think this is more a direct response to the attack on the bridge.
Yeah, makes sense. I completely agree with you. I don't think Russia will do anything larger than that. I hope
we can only
hope. Yeah, because civilians, as they've said, civilians they're the ones who are paying the highest price.
No heat, no water either.
Yeah, I agree. It really, truly is unfortunate, the situation going on right now. Following Russia's missile attack on Ukraine, President Biden has made his stance clear. On Monday, October 10th, President Joe Biden spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky regarding the USA's involvement in aiding Ukraine's fight. After expressing his condolences toward the loved ones of those affected by the attack, he adamantly condemned the missile strikes and pledged a continued assistance in the war. President Biden expressed that he would, quote, continue imposing costs on Russia, holding Russia accountable for its war crimes and atrocities, and provide Ukraine with security, economic, and humanitarian assistance, end quote. Ukraine was gaining a lot of momentum on the battlefield, swiftly reclaiming a good portion of their lost territory, but the missile attacks were surely a blow to the morale of their forces. Hopefully turning the tide back in their favor, the U.S. will issue support to Ukraine's conflict by providing advanced air defense systems. The White House did not specify which air defense systems were mentioned, but the United States previously had committed to supplying Ukraine with National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems. These missile systems, or NASAMS, NASAMS for short, would be capable of countering any future Russian cruise missile attacks. A second senior administration official gave a summary of the air defense provided thus far, stating, quote, "We have transferred more than 1,400 Stinger anti-air systems to Ukraine, as well as air surveillance and multi-mission radars," end quote. All this accompanied by the proposed 8 NASAMS will be sure to significantly boost Ukraine's resistance moving forward. Yeah, so with the situation at hand here, President Joe Biden and the U.S. actually helping Ukraine by providing air defense technology. Do we think, as Russia gains some momentum back after what we had talked about last week with Ukraine, getting a little bit of momentum, but now it seemed to have shifted, do we think that President Biden will provide more than just air support and air defense technology for Ukraine? And do we think that support is actually enough for Ukraine?
From my point of view, in the question between Ukraine and Russia, the U.S. is obviously going to pick Ukraine's side, and they've been helping them since the beginning of the war, as well as, of course, from just U.S., the help is not enough. But if we're talking about all the countries combined, those countries who are taking the side of Ukraine and their help, I think it is more than enough, and I don't think it's going to be just air support. And as I've mentioned already, I hope Russia is not going to do attacks that are going to be worse than this one, because it's the biggest one that we had. What do you think about it?
I definitely agree with you on that statement. I also think if the U.S. were to do more than they're already doing, it could end in more conflict just between Russia and the U.S., and we're already on
not really good terms.
Not really good terms.
Just, yeah.
So I think what we just did is the best case scenario, because we are helping them still, but we are keeping our distance to that point that we don't want to get too much involved.
Yeah,
I
exactly. I do agree, and I think, like you had mentioned, I think the U.S.'s role is just going to depend on how the situation is in the actual war. Like, for instance, right now, it's a very big situation where Russia actually had missile attacks in Ukraine, so I do think it's just going to depend on the situation and how much the U.S. will actually help Ukraine against Russia.
It's a very sticky situation. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Looking to Florida now, the Parkland shooter's death penalty trial is soon to reach a verdict. The conclusion of the months-long trial is at hand as the Parkland shooter finally takes accountability for the deadliest mass shooting at an American high school to date. 24-year-old Nicholas Cruz pleaded guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder for the February 14, 2018 massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The public defenders assigned to represent Cruz suggested that the jury take into account his troubled history coming from a highly dysfunctional family life that could have caused serious mental and developmental issues. However, evidence brought to light a different perspective. Cruz's shooting of 14 students and 3 school staff members was coldly calculated and determined to be unrelated to any mental disorders or developmental delays. Neuropsychologist Dr. Robert Denny, who spent 400 hours with the gunman, testified that Cruz had both borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, but did not meet the criteria for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which the defense had proposed. Prosecutors presented evidence showing the gunman spent months online gathering information to carry out his plan. This included searching phrases on Google such as, quote, "How long does it take for a cop to show up at a school shooting?" end quote, and leaving comments on YouTube videos saying, quote, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter," end quote. Family members of the victims were given the opportunity to take the stand to offer raw and emotional testimony on how their lives had been impacted, which even brought tears to members of Cruz's own defense team. We hope that the final verdict can bring even the slightest bit of closure to all these grieving individuals. So do we believe that the death penalty is the right answer, or should he spend his life in prison reflecting this crime?
Yeah, I do think in the context of the situation, I think life in prison without parole is probably the best way to go about it. Or I don't know necessarily the best way to go about it, but the way I think it is going to end up going. In the context of the situation, we know that Cruz may have had some sort of mental disorder, antisocial and mental disabilities. So I think they're using that essentially as like an excuse to give life in prison without parole. Just from I believe today, the jury came to that conclusion that they should give him life in prison without parole. So I do think the mental disorder part is more so just an excuse, and I think they're going to use that to bring about that decision.
I mean, and this is the deadliest shooting ever.
I don't
for high
think
school.
that being just having psychological issues, it is not an excuse for anyone to do whatever he did, as well as troubled upbringing. It's not an excuse as well. You killed people. Everybody had some kind of childhood trauma that they're dealing with, and hundreds of people had it worse than the majority. It's not an excuse. And also, whatever punishment that we will pick for him, it won't bring the lives of children that were dead and all the people that died during this shooting back. So I just think that people need to work on how to prevent situations like this, because it sounds, looks, and terrible, and there is no excuse for killing and shooting people.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality of the situation is, although he may have had some sort of mental disorder, it was planned. That's absolutely outrageous.
I mean, searching that up, how you're gonna plan, that's obvious plans.
Yes.
It's obvious plans, and that just shows, yes, you can have this disorder, but you knew what you were doing.
Exactly, 100%. And the reality is you can never bring those lives back. So it's unfortunate, and we'll just see how things turn out. President Biden has announced an executive order to pardon thousands who are convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Biden and his administration say that they will reevaluate whether or not marijuana should continue to be under the same legal category of drugs such as heroin and LSD. The pardons apply to everyone who was convicted on federal charges of simple possession since it became a crime back in the 1970s. However, the pardons will not apply to people convicted of selling or distributing marijuana. Officials noted that between the years 1992 and 2021, 6,500 people were convicted of simple possession under federal law. The pardon will help remove obstacles for people trying to get a job, find housing, applying for college, or applying to receive federal benefits. Biden states, quote, "While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates," end quote. Advocates believe that this is an important first step to reversing decades of uneven drug enforcement policy that has historically burdened black communities. Biden urges other governors to follow his lead, emphasizing that those convicted on state charges for marijuana possession vastly outnumber those charged under federal laws. Biden also tweeted, quote, "Sending people to jail for possessing marijuana has upended too many lives for conduct that is legal in many states," end quote. Biden also stated on Twitter that the federal government still needs to enforce, quote, "important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales of marijuana," end quote. Advocates believe that more has to be done to address marijuana charges on the state level, where the majority of offenses occur. Republicans, on the other hand, are calling Biden's move an executive overreach and saying that Democrats are just trying to attract voters in November. So with President Biden pardoning marijuana possession, it's a very huge change. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what do we actually think about the pardon?
I personally, just seeing how California, let alone, legalizes marijuana, and so do other states, I feel that he did the right thing in pardoning people, especially people that isn't hurting other people by taking this drug. Yes, they are impaired, they shouldn't be driving, but at the end of the day, it's not like they're doing crack. It's not like they're doing this mind-altering substance to the point where it puts other people in harm. And the fact that it did say people in possession, not people selling. So
Yes.
it's people, trying to let off steam, whatever. But me personally, I think he did do the right thing because everybody makes mistakes, and this gives them the opportunity to not have something so harsh to be noted as a criminal on their record.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think this whole pardon it's very fair and a good, definitely a very good thing because some people couldn't actually buy a house or people couldn't get a certain job. People couldn't go to a certain college because of this. So to actually pardon so many people, I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a step into the right direction. The Los Angeles City Council President Nury Martinez has officially resigned after making racist comments toward a fellow council member and his adopted black child. She was exposed by a leaked audio recording that was posted anonymously on Reddit and then put into the public eye by the Los Angeles Times. On the recording, Martinez was conversing with council members Gil Cedillo and Kevin DeLeon and the president of the LA County Federation of Labor, Ron Herrera. Although much of their discussion was regarding economic issues, the topic quickly changed to council member Mike Bonin. Mike Bonin had appeared with his husband and adopted 8-year-old black son at a Martin Luther King Jr. Day parade. Martinez's comments shocked the Los Angeles community and all other listeners as they called Bonin out for, quote, handling his young black son as though he was an accessory, end of quote. Then to make matters worse, she went on to address the boy's misbehavior during the event, saying, quote, they are raising him like a little white kid. This kid needs a beatdown. Let me take him around the corner and then I'll bring him back, end of quote. The audio recording to the Times was from October 2021 and has yet to have been verified. However, resignation is a clear indication of her guilt in the matter. Bonin took to Twitter appalled by the council members' words and called for them all to permanently resign from any public officials' post in the Los Angeles area. So, should all those involved in the leak audio officials lose their positions, and should we held all of them accountable for what they did?
Yes, I most definitely do think that they should be held accountable. I'm not certain if all of them will lose their positions. I know Nury Martinez has already resigned. I don't know if that's going to be the case for the others involved, but I definitely do think they should be held accountable, and they already are being held accountable. There was actually an LA City Council meeting. I don't know if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, but people were already sharing their frustrations over the comments, and they were pretty much screaming for all the members to resign. And I think it's a reflection of the community because the community in Los Angeles is very diverse, and we want people in charge who are respectful of everybody of all kinds. So we want to make sure they're respectful and they're aware of their surroundings. And to make those comments, it's just very overboard.
Yeah, it's
very sickening.
Being in other people's business, the way they raise their child, it is not your child. Mm-hmm. I don't think you should care about that, to be honest, because as long as the child is good and healthy and everything, and it's not your business. That's what I think. It's kind of inappropriate to just go into the business of another person and discuss it with other people. And the fact that they didn't step up and say, you're saying something wrong, that is not what you're supposed to talk about, I think they should be held accountable for that one as well.
I definitely agree. I also think for someone to even say something like that, especially to a little kid, you're involving not only race, you are also involving a threat and very descriptive detail of what you're gonna do. Nobody with that high of power should be saying anything remotely like that or being a part of that. So I definitely agree with those statements. There needs to be a change, especially, you know how politics go. But this is LA's leaders, and we need to do better. We really do. And that meeting, I'm sure, helped bring unity and really hold our leaders accountable from now on. On Tuesday, it was reported that a new forecast predicts that the cost of the airline tickets will be the most expensive in years this holiday season, as they are set to go up again as Thanksgiving draws near. According to the travel site Hopper, tickets will cost 19% more compared to last year, with the average domestic round trip at $274. This is a result of there being an increased demand for travel and fewer flights available, with many being canceled. Just this past summer, airlines canceled a total of 55,000 flights, and federal data showed that 40% of all cancellations were for reasons that the airlines could control and not due to issues like weather. Many airlines have blamed their delays on cancellations on understaffed air traffic control centers. However, hiring has been ramping up in the airline industry. The FAA is bringing on new air traffic controllers. American Airlines has hired more than 1,400 new employees since Labor Day, and United has added more than 1,500 new pilots this year. Yet, industry data shows that American Airlines dropped 31,000 placeholder flights from its November schedule. So, there is still an increased risk of cancellations. As for now, experts state that travelers should not wait too long to buy tickets because flights are likely to sell out quickly and prices will continue to rise.
And with that, that's all we have time for today.
Have a great week, everyone, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info.
We'll see you next time on The Report.